On this edition of the program, we got all the way deep into the trade war with China. No, I'm not a peasant. You're a peasant. You know who's definitely not a peasant? Our old pal Tom Merritt. He joins us to talk about the federal case against Meta. All that, plus AOC, Brian Kemp, Cuomo in New York City. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for April 16th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here in Austin, Texas. Facebook is on trial. I'm going to call him Facebook. I have a problem going back and forth between Meta and Facebook. All these different names for things. I'm getting to be an old man and I'm starting to be stuck in my ways. But still, they were Facebook when they faced these charges. They're Meta now. Mark Zuckerberg's company in front of federal authorities as a antitrust case is launched against them. Tom Merritt joins us to break down the merits of that case. It also looks like Andrew Cuomo is running away with the New York City mayoral race. And speaking of New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of, the dreams in the head of AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, are very, very green. Massive Q1 fundraising haul for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But we begin today discussing China. When we last left you, there was a pause in Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariff bonanza, but for one country. And that, of course, is the roaring dragon of the East, China. Not only were they not on the pause list, they also got an additional hike, which has created out and out trade war between the United States and them, the People's Republic of China. And then news came on Saturday morning that maybe not all of China's exports would be heavily tariffed. Indeed, 60% of them might fit neatly into exemptions that were published by the Customs and Border Patrol. It is Chinese-made electronics, including smartphones, laptops, and semiconductors that are on the list, and they do not fall subject to the increased reciprocal tariffs that were announced. Now, they still are a part of the 20% fentanyl tax that was put in before the Liberation Day, but it is a long cry away from what we have seen over the last few weeks. So, did the White House blink? Did they get a little scared of going to war with China? Well, it depends on who you ask. The Trump administration and folks who got our Sunday show heard it right from their own mouths, said this is all just a big misunderstanding. Yeah, on the current Customs and Border Patrol list, they're not on there, but semiconductors are going into their own bucket. A bucket in the same way that we have a bucket for steel and a bucket for cars. We're going to have a bucket for pharmaceuticals. We're going to have a bucket for lumber, and we're going to have a bucket for semiconductors. Everything with a bucket is non-negotiable. Those are sectors that we desperately want to bring to have greater industry here in the United States. So sure, you can bring your stuff in now outside of that gigantic tariff number, but please be prepared for new regulations. When are those set to happen? It depends on who you ask. Donald Trump said within a week. Howard Lutnick said within a month or two. So was this paused? Was this a carve out? We do have some evidence to say that the carve out was there on purpose. Mark Caputo of Axios says that everything is as it was going to be. Donald Trump just got a little frustrated with people throwing around the E words, exemptions and exceptions. And since those were the dominant headlines on Saturday, he dispersed all of his trade representatives onto television on Sunday to make it very clear that nobody was getting an exemption or an exception. Part of the reason why he hates this, and this is according to Caputo, is because he believed during his first term, Robert Lighthizer, quote, granted too many exceptions and didn't drive enough hard bargains. So, okay, the tariffs are high from the United States. If you're going to bring stuff into the U.S., you're going to pay a very, very hefty fee. And so tariff rates are high. The E words are in the ether. But we get new saber rattling today as I'm recording this on Tuesday. The U.S. government considering delisting nearly 300 Chinese companies from American stock exchanges as part of the trade war. The move, supported by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Senator Rick Scott, aimed to pressure China into trade negotiations by targeting its access to U.S. capital markets. The proposal leverages the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, citing non-compliance with U.S. financial transparency rules. So there's a question of how this could happen legally. There was a law that was passed last year that essentially said Chinese companies needed to show their books on a regular basis, but there are questions as to whether or not old non-compliance would count toward delisting now, or if Donald Trump would just have to sign more executive orders to make it happen faster. He obviously has no qualms with doing that. And yet, China strikes back.
让美国那些乡巴佬们在中华民族5000年文明面前去哀鸣吧。
That is China's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Jia Baolong. And if you are not a fluent Mandarin speaker, he said the following: the U.S. isn't after our tariffs, but our very survival. The U.S. has repeatedly contained and suppressed Hong Kong, and this will eventually backfire on itself. Let those peasants in the United States wail in front of 5,000 years of Chinese civilization. This is, of course, a response to J.D. Vance, who in a Fox News interview last week said the following: America borrows money from Chinese peasants only to buy the products those peasants produce. Peasant talk is on the rise. And then there's this, a hard financial repercussion of the trade war. China has reportedly ordered its airlines to halt deliveries of Boeing jets, escalating tensions in the U.S.-China trade war and dealing another blow to the troubled American aerospace giant. Now, there were 29 planes that were destined for China that now they are holding up on. It's not a huge blow to Boeing. They were already behind on deliveries, so they'll just find somebody else that they're late on delivering to give those Chinese planes to. But still, it is something. And amongst all of this is I'm not going to call him. He can call me, but I'm not going to call him. Oh, does he say he's not going to call me? Because I'm not going to call him, just so you know. They can always call us, but we're not going to call them. That's literally what's happening right now between the United States and China. Both the White House and Xi's office is saying just that. We're always open to talk, but you need us more than we need you. So we'll just go ahead and keep an eye on the phone. So when you break, you're going to go ahead and dial us up. Of course, this is not a trade war that benefits either party. As I record this, the Chinese yuan is at a 17-year low, and the dollar, after falling on Monday, rallied a little bit on Tuesday, at least against the euro and the yen, the currencies that it is closest to be pegged to. And while Donald Trump says he's flexible and has not been insulting to Xi, I have a hard time believing that we're going to go back to the way things were with China anytime soon. Because the things that the United States is asking for, China to respect intellectual property laws from the United States, the ability for U.S. companies to operate within China without local partners, I just don't think is anything that China's going to do. So will we see a rollback of the tariffs that we have now? My guess is, yeah, sure, eventually. But I do think that the White House, as currently constructed, doesn't mind if they make it a lot more annoying to operate in China. And they do incentivize American companies to do more work, at least not in China. Hopefully in America, but at least not in China. And by and large, when it comes to polling, America tends to be in a bipartisan position that they would like to be tougher on China. That is until things start getting more expensive, which is where the rubber meets the road in general with any of these conversations. At least that's this peasant's opinion. This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you get 2 bonus episodes of this podcast. And we had a couple doozies. I'm telling you. Last Thursday was when the pause happened. So if you wanted my opinions immediately on the show, well, that was the place that you got them. A lot of people found out about the pause on the PX3 Extra. And then, of course, we had the Sunday show, which turned out to be a pretty consequential one because the White House scrambled the jets. They wanted every trade representative, everybody involved in the economy out on every single Sunday show because they know the Sunday shows are where DC talks to itself. And they wanted to be a part of the conversation. We brought you all of those comments. We brought you all of my commentary. And guys, it's, I think, a pretty reasonable price. $3 a week. If you'd buy me a cup of coffee once each week so I could talk to you 2 more times, well, then this is a deal for you. And then at the annual package, $99, 150 episodes of the show, less than $1 an episode. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm giving this stuff away. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez achieved a record-breaking fundraising milestone in the first quarter of 2025, raising $9.6 million more than her previous highest quarterly total of $4.4 million in 2020. It's a lot of scratch. Average donation was $21. 64% were first-time donors, and she now has over $8 million in cash on hand. I want to remind you that right now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez isn't running for anything other than her House seat, which she can comfortably win for the rest of her life for the price of $0. So what does that amount of cash tell you? Well, along with some polling that says that she might have a shot against Chuck Schumer, she could be loading up for a very consequential primary in the world of the Democratic Party. Or let's say she wants to, lay down her arms. She doesn't want to take on Chuck Schumer just yet. Chuck Schumer will do her bidding and shut down the government the next time that opportunity rolls around. Well, then she now becomes a power player in the House because the money that comes into her, she can transfer to the congressional committee. She can give to other candidates for whom she likes and she wants to make sure stays in Congress. This is the kind of stuff that made Nancy Pelosi who she was in terms of fundraising. Now, obviously, Nancy Pelosi is an exceptional vote counter, and I'm not here to compare AOC to that. But you get on plum committees, you get to be in leadership when you raise cash. And $9.6 million in one quarter? Oh, baby. That's green. Let's stay in New York. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo holds a double-digit lead in the New York City mayoral race, according to a Siena College poll released Tuesday. This from The Hill. The poll showed Cuomo ahead in the first round of a hypothetical ranked choice voting matchup with 34% support to the 16% support earned by his next closest opponent, State Assembly member Zohran Mamdani. Meanwhile, City Comptroller Brad Lander, City Council Speaker Adrian Adams, and former Comptroller Scott Stringer tied for third with 6% support each. All the remaining candidates received 5%. Now, since this is ranked choice voting, that means that you actually have to run the runoffs of who everybody's next choice would be. And in that world, Cuomo would win the Democratic nomination on the 8th round, 54% of the vote to Mamdani's 27% and Lander's 19%. That essentially would make him mayor, as the New York City GOP is just useless. I mean, you can't find one rich Republican in New York City. Really? You can't find a Republican that's a billionaire who agrees with abortion? Really? Come on, New York City Republican Party. What the hell's going on? Meanwhile, this is the first poll to be conducted since incumbent Mayor Eric Adams chose to run as an independent. Cuomo's going to be the mayor. That's that. Now, that does kind of deny me a trip to New York City this summer, which is a bummer because I would like to go to New York City at any time. Maybe not the summer, but I don't know. Now I guess I got to go to New Jersey. That New Jersey race is a little closer. I got to do a New Jersey segment next week. We'll do a Jersey segment. All right, finally, per our guest last week, Alex Eisenstadt of Axios, Senate Majority Leader John Thune met with Brian Kemp on Monday. Brian Kemp, as the GOP lobbies the Georgia Republican to run for the Senate in 2026. Georgia, of course, is a top pickup opportunity for Senate Republicans, and the popular Kemp is seen as the party's strongest potential candidate. Thune was joined at Monday's lunch by NRSC Chair Tim Scott, according to two people familiar with the meeting. Kemp's wife, Marty, also attended. Scott was quoted saying, "If Kemp runs, he wins." I want you guys to keep an eye on this, because we saw perennial Lucy with the football, Chris Sununu, who always threatens to run for Senate from New Hampshire and then never does. He said no. Okay. So on one hand, you could look at that and say, ooh, you want to know what? Sununu saw those special elections. Sununu sees those economy numbers from the Trump administration for the first time in several years. Voters, according to polling, believe that Democrats would be a better party to steward the economy than Republicans. Not looking so good. And so maybe that's the reason that Sununu wasn't going to run. Not because he never does, but because he's looking at the facts on the ground and says, nah, this ain't going to be a good year for old Sununu. And maybe Kemp, who has perennially been on the fence, he has always said, well, you know, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I won't, at least for this thing. He's been governor before. And everything I've heard from Brian Kemp, or around Brian Kemp, I don't know anybody inside Kemp's camp, but everything I've heard around Georgia Republican politics is that he does take the job of governing very seriously. But if he doesn't run, because Georgia is a red state, especially for Brian Kemp, and Kemp knows how to mobilize people in off-year elections. If that is the case, then I do believe that the word is out inside the Republican Party that they think that these midterms are going to be a disaster. I think this is a big moment for the Republicans. A, to take that Senate seat, because I do still have Kemp as a favorite over Ossoff. But if they can't convince him, something may indeed be rotten in the state of Denmark. That's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to get 2 bonus episodes of this show, just $3 a week, build 12 monthly, or go ahead and get the annual plan. Treat yourself. We're going to be into the primaries, very much into the primaries by this time next year. By the time that you'd have to think about this again, we'll be riding a sugar high of ads. Oh man, we're getting close to ads now. I've seen a few that I really like and one that I hated. Oh my God, there's a Mike Rogers ad that's terrible. He's running for Senate in Michigan. It's just nothing but butt rock. Like the sounds that you hear when you're watching a truck ad, like like that. But then also he's walking, and then the stuff behind him keeps changing, but it's making like the military teletype sound in a Michael Bay movie. So he's like, I was born here in Michigan. And then like behind him, now it's like the 1950s. I don't know. It stinks. 2.5 minutes. Just super boring bio. Meanwhile, one of his possible Democratic challengers there for that open seat in Michigan, Mallory McMorrow, she had a great initial ad. That's a Liz Smith candidate, by the way. So she's going to run a good campaign because Liz Smith's a good operative. That's TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Anyway, head over there. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. And now, Mr. Tom Merritt. Joining us is the one and only Tom Merritt, Daily Tech News Show. Welcome back to the program, Mr. Merritt.
Thank you for having me back, Mr. Young.
I want to talk to you about what is happening right now with Meta that is involved in an antitrust trial brought by the first Trump administration, now being prosecuted by the second Trump administration. Although we have seemingly gone through an evolution of Meta or Mark Zuckerberg's personal blossoming. He's got more gold chains now. He is more Brazilian jiu-jitsu'd. Run us through what is happening.
Yeah. So like you said, this was begun in 2019 under the Trump administration. It was carried forward by Lina Khan and the Biden administration. The short history is that the Federal Trade Commission, while approving this under the Obama administration back in the early teens, the FTC said, you know what? We didn't actually approve it. We just didn't object to it. And now we object to it. So in 2019, they filed a suit saying that Meta's acquisition of WhatsApp and Instagram violated antitrust because Meta was attempting to eliminate competitors. It therefore lowered the quality of those apps by dominating the market for personal social messaging. And therefore, we now have a worse experience. So yeah, it didn't hurt consumers on price, which is usually what you do with antitrust, but it hurt them by giving you an ad-riddled app and violating your privacy and eliminating the competition, which the FTC in this case defines as Instagram, WhatsApp, MeWe, and Snapchat. That is the market for personal social messaging.
Really?
Yeah.
Not like Telegram or Signal?
Nope.
Or
Nope. just those that it is WhatsApp, Instagram, MeWe, and Snapchat. I don't know if they're going to succeed at convincing the judge that is the
like
market.
Messages would probably be, by that terminology, the largest social network in the world, right?
And I think they'd have a harder time proving that Meta dominates it in the United States, because remember, this is a U.S. case.
Yeah.
And WhatsApp is very dominant worldwide, but it is a smaller percentage, much smaller percentage in the United States where iMessage dominates. And that's Meta's counter argument is, no, our competition is Apple messaging, TikTok, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera.
Walk me through this, because I am old enough to remember, and I think at this point have also been doing content with you about tech news, when Meta, then Facebook, bought Instagram. But at that stage of the tech world, they were buying a future competitor, but in the same way that Google would buy YouTube, because they believed that YouTube created another search index and another place to put advertising. This didn't seem to be super controversial of an idea, that they would be buying something that they could fold into what they did best, which was serving advertising. They also paid what was at the time the richest price in the game for Instagram. It was a very quaint time of $2 billion, which is now what we call 2 presidential election fundraising months. But but back then that was eye-popping. Yeah.
It is not the argument. I should say the argument is not it's bad to buy competitors. The argument is that it is bad to buy your competition to eliminate any competition. So what the FTC is trying to argue is not like, oh, it was a competitive marketplace and 2 competitors merged to get an upper hand against their other competitors. What they're saying is there was only the one competitor, Instagram, in 2012. And so Facebook bought it at the time to eliminate it as competition. And then 2 years later, they did the same with WhatsApp. They bought WhatsApp to eliminate the competition.
Does WhatsApp have advertising?
It has a very, very small amount of advertising, mostly through business messaging, but not like you don't get ads on WhatsApp when you're using it.
Not in the same way that you get ads on Facebook or you get ads on Instagram, which is pretty heavy.
Yeah, no, it is certainly, you know what, I'm going to check this because I want to make sure that I'm correct. Yeah, when you log in, there's no ads showing.
I have never seen ads. Now, I've seen a lot of spam. I've certainly been put in a lot of group chats for hotshot crypto tips.
And there are definitely
for that service, WhatsApp.
Legitimate and illegitimate ads. So some of those may not be legitimate, but there is advertising in the sense that WhatsApp operates like a business messaging plan where you can message your audience and you pay a little extra to make sure they get to the right audience and stuff like that.
But that doesn't seem like a thing that culturally in the United States has the same purchase as in foreign markets, because like WhatsApp is a huge platform outside of the United States where stuff like that makes a lot more sense because people just spend a lot more time in WhatsApp.
Yeah, specifically in Europe. Like WhatsApp is messaging in Europe. If you deal with anyone in Europe or you travel to Europe, you're just going to have WhatsApp as the way that you text message people. When people say text message me, they mean message me on WhatsApp there.
I was scheduled today as we were recording this Tuesday, on GB News, the free expression voice of Great Britain, on WhatsApp, because everybody in Europe, that's what they do. They use WhatsApp.
Yeah, it same goes. If you're in Japan, they're going to use Line. If you're in Korea, they're going to use KakaoTalk. If you're in Europe, they're going to use WhatsApp. But it's a little bit different here in the United States, where we just used SMS. Yeah, we use good old fashioned text messaging, which again is why I think the FTC has an uphill battle with WhatsApp and why they didn't want to make this messaging. I was saying personal social messaging. It was personal social networking is what the FTC is trying to say is the market.
The other thing that's odd about unwinding Meta at this point is that WhatsApp and Instagram were kind of the last 2 bites at the apple that then Facebook, now Meta, was really able to do. Because at that point, they were too big to buy stuff. And we did kind of see this process work out in the way that it usually does, which is when you're on the way up, you probably have 2 or 3 big bites at the apple. Google bought YouTube, and there's a few other examples like that. But otherwise, you're looking at acqui-hires and companies that aren't all that big or all that successful, because you can't buy it. This is part of the reason why when you hear the other big tech story that folds in with politics, TikTok, you never hear Meta or Google being the one to buy TikTok, because that would not clear any kind of regulatory hurdle, because they're just too big in that space.
Yeah, the last thing Meta bought of any big significance was Oculus, and it was tiny at the time. And so, when you hear about Apple acquiring something, it's usually because a company disappears and no one knows what happened to it until someone's like, yeah, I think they're working at Apple now. And then you realize Apple bought it, but not because Apple goes out and buys large companies. You're not going to see Apple buy Netflix, even though everybody says they should for that reason. If you were to see something, it would be a huge merger, like Apple merging with Disney or something like that. You're not going to see Meta do this. And that is one of the problems with antitrust law around the world, not just in the United States, is that it tends to lag behind. And when it does end up solving a problem, it often solves the problem after it's no longer a problem.
And that's what fascinates me about this particular situation. Because, man, if there was ever a moment, from my point of view, as somebody who does talk about tech and talk about politics constantly, I don't think that there's a really compelling case here. But if there ever was one, the last days of it were probably in the first Trump administration. And it's certainly not now, where like the golden goose for Facebook, now Meta, I hate saying that, and Google, now Alphabet, whatever, is ad sales. And I think with AI, with generative AI, Google's seeing it. There's reports today on Tuesday when we're recording this that OpenAI is considering a social network that they're showing people a social network that would almost assuredly not have any ads on it, because they are not in the ad market right now. The world of online ad sales, while still incredibly lucrative because it is a zero margin product, you can sell it for whatever you want. You don't have to pay anything, or peanuts, essentially, just to serve it. But it's not the same bonanza that it was before. You can see that this line is bending in a different direction, maybe not downward, but it is not the rocket ship to Mars that it once was. So the idea of punishing an online ad sales company for having too much space to sell online ads seems a little anachronistic.
Well, and that is another interesting thing about this. Google was found guilty of, I don't know if guilty is the right word in this kind of case, but they were found to have abused their dominant market position in advertising, in a sector of advertising, not all advertising, particularly search advertising. And we're waiting later this year to hear what the judge thinks the remedy might be. Now, you've probably seen some headlines of like, the Justice Department is asking him to make them get rid of Android. My guess is that he will probably say you can't have these kind of exclusive deals or something like that. Yeah. It's a very narrow thing. What the FTC is doing with Meta is not going after their dominance of advertising, which I think you could make an argument for them being dominant in certain types of advertising that Google is not, by buying Instagram. But instead, they're saying they're dominating the marketplace for personal social networking, which, as we've discussed, doesn't seem to apply to WhatsApp very well. And even if it applied to Instagram, probably only applied back into the Obama administration in 2012, 13 years ago, when they acquired Instagram. Since then, the marketplace has changed quite a bit, and Instagram is scrambling to be more like Snapchat and TikTok to keep its place in the market, which implies that no, even if Meta did buy Instagram with the intention of getting rid of a competitor, there's some emails that are coming out in the court that implies that maybe their mindset was they're growing faster than us. We need to buy them, before they outperform us. it didn't work out that way. They didn't dominate that space. They have been effectively competed with. And I think Meta is going to make a pretty compelling argument that that's the case.
Let's get to the Zuckerberg of it all. He has been a divisive political figure, long a punching bag on the right. Then the aforementioned bro up from old Zuck. He is surfing with an American flag in a way that he was not previous. And yet he kind of finds himself in a place where nobody likes him, because now the liberal coastal elite finds him to be somebody that isn't part of the true plan. And he doesn't seem to have a tremendously warm reception on the right. I don't know whether or not this case will affect it, but how do you view the political potency of Zuck?
That is a very difficult to wrangle with question. As we discussed at the beginning here, this case began under the Trump administration, and I think a lot of people interpreted it as the administration angry at Facebook, which the president has said clearly that he was many times. It was continued by the Biden administration up until getting dismissed in June 2024 for not having proper amounts of evidence in the filing. And then they refiled it. And the judge said, OK, now you've got enough evidence for us to at least hear a case. And that's why we're hearing it now. And then Andrew Ferguson, who is the current chair of the Federal Trade Commission, apparently thought it was important enough to meet with the president and say, don't let Meta's lobbying sway you into ordering us to drop the case. Now, Ferguson has said if he gets a legal order to drop the case, he'll drop the case. But it seems like he had to at least talk to the president. I don't know how hard he had to argue. But he and the DOJ's antitrust enforcement attorney at least felt it was necessary to sit down and go, yeah, I know Zuck's doing a charm offensive, but let us keep going with this case. It's still not a very good case. I could see them saying, like, you know what, get as much as you can out of Zuck. We'll play this out in court as long as we can, but we are going to lose. So just know that, Mr. President. Maybe that was the conversation. I don't know. But yeah, it seems like the president may have softened up a little, but not much.
Let's also make this clear. This has nothing to do with the whistleblower that just spoke to Congress and wrote a book about her time at Facebook/Meta, right?
As far as I know, other than it both being about Meta, these are unrelated.
Yeah. And that is a whole nother thing. Also, like, I can't remember a company having two bombshell congressional whistleblowers in the way that Meta has for whatever whatever they do over there. It does seem like people sure like writing books and going to talk about them in front of Congress when it comes to Meta.
I know some people who have worked at Facebook in the past. I don't know anyone who speaks fondly of their time at Facebook in the past. So
I know one. I know one person that's been there. I think you probably know her too. But
you know what? Yeah, okay, that's fair.
She likes it.
She's at there now, though. I'm right, still there. Yeah,
she's still
there are people.
Maybe
I know,
when she leaves, she'll have a bunch of things that she wants to say.
I guess my point is
hold her tongue.
I know people who've gotten laid off, and they are obviously under NDAs and things like that. But in private, they not worried about sparing the feelings of their former company. And so I imagine that there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of, they are not a company culture that brings about peace, love, and joy. But then neither's Netflix by reputation. Neither's Apple by reputation.
Say,
you don't hear the same thing about them. Yeah.
Nobody has a good thing to say about working at Google. Like you go to Google and then you get smothered by middle management, and then you can't do anything, and then you leave Google, and then if you do something good, Google buys you, and then you're back at the Googleplex.
You know what's weird about Google though, and my wife is a former Google employee, but she left on her own. She didn't get laid off. all of her friends who used to work at Google, they're not happy about being laid off and they've got their complaints, but they still kind of like, oh, but we had so much fun. You know, they had those, the eloquent, like, times that they had.
She was
there.
on
I don't
a different
hear that
side
about
of it,
Facebook.
though. She was on the YouTube side. That's different
that's fair.
Like the Silicon Valley, you know, Google crowd.
Yeah. I just feel like Google did foster a little more wistful memories from people than Facebook has. This is all anecdotal though. I don't know if
we are talking totally out of school. I do think it's notable that there was one book. There was a publishing desire to print a Facebook tell-all and then to get a congressional hearing out of it. And then it happened again.
Yeah,
that's interesting to me. Whatever you think of those books, and I know that there are criticisms of them, but the first one was more along the lines of social media doing harm, especially to young girls. This one is actually, I think, a little bit more meatier, at least in terms of the stuff that was brought up during the congressional hearing of Facebook possibly secretly talking to China and wanting to store Chinese data on Chinese servers, which they were not supposed to do. Like, at least there are accusations there that are more like, all right, we'll prove this is either true or not true.
Although I took that as like, okay, so Facebook looked at doing business in China, because if you do business in China, you have to store data on their servers. That's just the cost of doing entry. So I didn't find that particularly salacious. I guess what I would say is probably true is everyone thinks Facebook is responsible for the results of the 2016 election. Yeah. At least on the opposition side of the aisle. And I don't think that's true. I think the Cambridge Analytica story is widely misunderstood and exaggerated, but the story has persisted. And I think that feeds a lot of the attitude around Meta as well.
And the Russian ads. That gigantic Russian ad buy that flipped the 2016 election, thousands of dollars spent for Moscow.
Well, that came because people were looking for other things after Cambridge Analytica, right? They're like, they did that. What else did they do? And then they found that.
Yeah, they spend as much as an Etsy store would on Facebook, which, considering we are not flooded with doilies, I don't know exactly how much a few $1,000s worth of Facebook ads.
Doilies with the Kremlin on them. Yeah.
So we don't think that this is gonna happen. This seems to be pretty weak stuff.
Yeah. If I were to set into my speculation chamber, which I've just created, I'm going to go sit down in there.
We are sealing ourselves in the speculation chamber, Tom.
I wonder if Ferguson believes that they have more of a case than they do, and or thinks they can hurt Meta, that they can get something out of them, maybe get them to settle out of court or something like that. And the president is using that as leverage, because that's what this president does. He uses things as leverage and makes deals. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd call it a 72% chance that this gets settled out of court, that either the U.S. drops the case and we find out that Meta is going to do X, Y, or Z in response, or Meta agrees to pay a big old check to the United States government, but admit no fault, and it gets settled out of court. I think there's a good chance of that, because they can drag this on. It's going to take 2 months to play out this entire trial, and it's a bench trial. So they got one person they need to convince. Yeah. That one person has already thrown the case out of court for lack of evidence before it even got to trial. All experts seem to think that this is a fairly weak case. So I don't think their prospects, the U.S. prospects of winning against Meta, are very good. So they must be doing this for something else, would be in my speculation chamber. That's my guess.
And in speculation chamber, you very much do not believe that there will be an unwinding of Meta, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
No, I mean, that if they were to win the case, I'd be very curious what the justification for the decision is. And that justification for the decision would likely be somewhat narrow, is my guess. And probably unwinding the acquisition wouldn't be the remedy, because we'd have to get through this entire case, figure out how they abuse their market position, and then the judge decides, okay, to remedy that abuse, you're going to do X, Y, or Z. And the fact that the market has shifted so much, I can't imagine the judge is going to continue to think that they are dominating the world of personal social messaging if he allows that to even be a marketplace at all. I don't know.
Especially when the entire administration uses another private social messenger.
Yes.
They're all on Signal.
Or at least the Department of Defense is. Yeah.
No, they're all on Signal. I know that for a fact. They're all.
You know
on
that
Signal.
for a fact. Okay.
Oh yeah. No. They're all on Signal. So it's like
could be worse.
Yeah. No, absolutely could.
In the past, we would have been doing a story about how they were all on Telegram and they should all be on Signal. So
exactly.
We've made progress.
Let me ask you just one last thing here about Facebook and Meta in general. This is more on the tech side. They've spent a lot of money on the metaverse, not a tremendous amount of return. They have now spent a lot of money on the LLM side because everybody's pivoting to AI, but they have decided that they are going to be more on the open source side. They're going to be the champions of open source with largely good results. This last go round, not so great results, but still, by and large, they have acquitted themselves particularly well, but not particularly profitable. Are we coming to a point where Meta has to start showing a little, a little profitability for all the investment they've done in these more speculative fields?
I think for shareholders, yes. Shareholders are getting impatient on that and they want to see more progress. I think they can point to the Llama AI stuff as progress and maybe mollify the shareholders. The metaverse stuff, I think, was often misinterpreted as well. Zuckerberg was very clear. He's like, this is a long-term bet. We're going to spend a lot of money on this for many years before we get a return. And I think in his mind and by his words, it's too early to tell if something that could someday be called the metaverse is a success for Meta, because we don't even know what that is. And I don't think Meta knows what it is. They're just placing a bunch of bets that it might arise out of this or that, including out of their AI development. So I think it's way too early in reality to decide whether that's important or not. They are doing a smart thing and saying, let's spend a lot of money to make sure we set it up for success. And we have a lot of money to spend, so the company isn't losing money. When you say you're losing money on the metaverse, that's because you're supposed to lose money on it. If they were a startup, they would be in that period of their development where like, we're spending a lot of money now so that we can finally get a product and launch it someday and gain that money back. So I'd give them another 5 years before you actually determine whether the metaverse strategy pays off or not for them. For the AI stuff, I feel like they're doing a smart thing there and saying, we can't compete at the front right now, so let's use the advantage of open source to be able to compete from the back. And I think that's wise too. Yeah,
but they're going to have to turn on the money fountain at some point.
At some point,
they're gonna have to offer an API that people.
If the advertising money starts to decline from other sources, which right now doesn't seem to be a problem, then there's going to be a lot more scrutiny on why are you spending all this money still on this stuff. But for the time being, I think they can say, it's a long-term bet.
Yeah. Well, certainly on the metaverse, that is the case, and on the AI side, I don't know. I think they're a very, very interesting company. Obviously, Zuckerberg is somebody that is a pop culture figure for us and certainly more interested in talking politics in a different kind of way than he had been in the past.
The AI stuff could just pop up one day with a hit, right? Like the way ChatGPT did. It may not, but that's the kind of thing where they're just going to keep developing. And one of these days they may pop in front, and that would be the payoff.
What I wonder is, are we in a position where ChatGPT has a lot more of a moat than people kind of think? Because if you look at other competitors there, the people that have the biggest footprint are like Google, which has a gigantic app footprint already. And then X, which even though Grok is not looked at as the top of LLMs, they certainly have a huge footprint on apps. And the number one free app in the world right now is ChatGPT, and that is something that is huge. Now, Facebook has a huge app. installation, but what can you do with it? That's the big question. And right now, people are making Studio Ghibli pictures of themselves and their kids, and that's what you can do with ChatGPT right now.
Yeah. If I would guess if if Meta were to jump in front in any of this space somehow, it wouldn't be in LLMs. It would be in a new type of model or a hybrid type of model or something like that. But I think you're right that the ChatGPT war is now a long-term war, and that is the history. We're now ChatGPT is the Google of its space, and will be for a long time.
Tom Merritt, Daily Tech News Show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, man. Good talking to you.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. You can always email the show, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Support us with a one-time donation, paypal.me/payjury, or Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash, and you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. And I'm checking that thing every day now because it's right by my child's daycare. Of course, the only place you can get our bonus content, takepoliticsseriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week or $99 for one entire year. That's 150 episodes of PX3 for under $100. But it's only our founding tier that gets your name read at the end of these shows, including L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah, Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony Speed J's from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? One place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. On Friday's edition of the show, our next free show, we will be joined by the one and only Gabe Fleischer. We're going to preview the reviews of Donald Trump's first 100 days. And we're going to try to find the one word that we believe will be quoted the most. Will it be the most heinous first 100 days? The most rollicking first 100 days? Will it be the most consequential first 100 days? We go through them all and we settle on our favorites. But that's on Friday. Until then, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Three.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show Audio.